Hello, everybody. Welcome to International Business. This is unit number 1, and we're going to be talking about globalization today. First of all, I want you to watch this video. In this video, they will be talking about the world's top 50 economies. It's a 10 minutes video, but I think it's good for you to really understand what some countries produce, what they're good at, where they're at right now, and it makes us understand where they are moving forward, right? So first of all, what we need to understand is in globalization is that trade has been increasing. I think there was a major shift. There was a major shift in economies back in the 80s, 90s, right? When we're talking about the 80s and before, we used to talk about protectionism of markets. So what's a protectionism of market means that I will try to produce things in my country and consume them within my country, right? So it started like that, but companies started to realize that at some certain point the market is capped, is limited. There's a limit to it. In terms of employees, the workforce sometimes is not enough. Am I producing too much? They started to become more effective. Also because machinery started to get more effective, they were able to produce more, also at better quality. But the market had a cap. What means the market had a cap? Maybe let's look, for example, at Korea, right? We have a population that is relatively small, and we're able to produce Samsung phones in massive numbers. So what are we going to do with all that exceedant that we have? We have to place it somewhere else. So back in the 80s, that protectionism again started to change when they say, well, we have a cap of the market. Let's try to put our products somewhere else, right? So some of the major countries, like for example, starting from America, they started to realize that they could put their products somewhere else. They started to put their products somewhere else, and of course, trade started to increase. So also countries started to realize that protectionism was not a great idea. Why? Because if I protect my market, I cannot have new products and I cannot be competitive. If there's only one product in my country, that doesn't make it productive or competitive. And we have to go back to the laws of economics that if there's in a free market, there's competition. And if there's no competition, if you have a poor product, it doesn't matter if I sell it poor or not, people, they're still going to consume it because there's one product. But the problem comes when there's two products. If there's two products, 3 products, 4 products, 5 products, you need to be very competitive. So this started to happen again back in the 90s, where many countries started to put their products abroad. And then, of course, the trade started to change and the world started to change because, again, we had more competition, we had more products, different availability of products, and the consumption of the consumers also started to change. They started to see, now I have different options and I will choose the best in quality or price, right? So this again started to shape how companies had to behave. Some of them had to go for cost efficiency. Some of others will go for quality efficiency. So we can see that the economy started to change until, well, maybe 30, 40 years now after, in the 2020s, where we can see that this foreign trade has changed a lot, right? So again, nowadays, the trade has changed because the barriers or the borders started to open, right? Like I said, many countries started to change and see. Even China. China was a very strong protectionist, well, still a very protectionist government, but when we look back at the 80s, they really were close to everything. So they realized by exchanging products, selling, producing, their economy would completely change. They started from installing special administrative regions. I think Shenzhen was the first one. Well, the Guangdong province, which is one of the southern provinces, and try to see how globalization works. How, if they produce things from other countries, how would that work? Actually, they realized it worked very, very well. And for that matter, they started to expand those special administrative regions, which allow importing and exporting products in a more free market way. So again, in this case, many countries have realized that, and there's only very few economies that still are struggling because they haven't globalized, like North Korea or Cuba or recently Venezuela. So we have a little bit of that, right? So in the end, what's globalization? It's a trend, which means we are open to foreign investment. We provide avenues as a country for companies to come to invest, to open their infrastructure and sell their products around. And the same thing as companies are trying to expand on other markets, because again, they cap their markets. Or also in terms of the globalization of production, which is I will find markets where it's easier to produce or cheaper, or I can produce with much more benefits. Okay, so yeah, the same thing is globalization is shaping the way the consumption changes. Here, for example, we have that consumers are becoming more receptive to foreign products, and consumers are starting to become global as well. Now you don't just go for local coffee, now you go to Starbucks, and there's no reverse to that, right? So that's happening a lot, the globalization of the markets, the consumption, and the globalization of production. Like I was saying, also the globalization of production means that maybe I will still sell my product in my country, but I am looking to produce it in somewhere else, because for me is I have a labor, energy, land, capital, human resources are there, right? So in this case, for example, yeah, here we have, for example, the case of Boeing. Boeing, it's a global company, so they do the engineering, design, marketing, sales, and final assembly, but everything is outsourced globally. I mean, they do this, Boeing and Airbus, they do it in America or in Europe, but many of their components come completely from somewhere else, right? So very good. So the globalization of production, as again, why has this happened? First of all, because trade barriers have lowered. Many countries have started to do free trade agreements, and that means a free trade agreement has a very simple meaning, which is I allow goods to come in without taxing them very highly, or no taxes, so they have preferential taxes. And the same thing, if I want to put some products abroad, I have preferential taxes. So that has worked very well. Transportation costs have gotten much lower because now it's more efficient. We're going to talk about how technology has improved transportation. Economic and political risk also has shifted, because now we can say that governments are becoming more stable. Well, not all the governments, but many governments are becoming more stable. Although there's a managerial challenge, which means putting your product abroad is not an easy task. In this subject, we're going to say that we're going to talk about the benefits, but also there's a lot of challenges, which is dealing with cultures that you don't know, dealing with rules that are hidden, dealing with so many things that nobody's going to tell you, they are not written, and you will have to explore and find them on their own, and sometimes it's not easy. So the emergence of global trade also has been helped because there has been global institutions like the World Trade Organization, IMF, or the World Bank that support this. They regulate the global trade, and now companies feel much safer to put their products abroad because they know if there's something going wrong, there's going to be a body that will be able to support them, rather than say like, oh, you failed in that country, sorry, you lost a lot of money. Now, all these institutions are helping to set the regulations and the standard for it. Okay, very good. So, now, like I was saying, there has been decline in barriers to free flow of goods. Countries have realized that opening their barriers is good. Now, be careful, because that doesn't mean you can open to anything that you want. Sometimes also some markets protect a certain industry. Why? Because they know that if they they will shut their own feet if they open to industries that they are key for their development, right? So in this case, we have to understand some countries have key industries that they need to protect, but there's some other that perhaps they don't have. If they don't come, then we cannot do it. Like, for example, in Korea, We're talking about Korean market in terms of the oil production, they don't have it. So you have to open to that. But when we're talking about technology, we're not going to let just any other companies come and install their operations in here because it's one of their your key markets. So you're going to heavily tax that. We can see the case of, for example, of car manufacturing. Car manufacturing when General Motors came in, I mean, it was a way to develop the economy, but in the end, they had heavier taxation than other cars or foreign cars, right? So here we have, let's talk about the drivers of globalization. We can talk about, like I said, when we talk about definition of international trade is when a firm exports or goods or services to consumers in another country. So that's international trade. And then we have foreign direct investment when a firm just invest resources and business activities outside its home country. So in this case, maybe I will invest in a factory or something and put it in there, but I don't really export into that country. It could be, for example, there's some countries that, you distribute in there, but majority to just have a factory in another country, like for example Nike in Malaysia. They have it and they distribute their goods as well, but mostly it's because they open the production in there. Okay, very good. So again, like I said, markets are growing, economies are getting better in general. So the markets are getting more purchasing power. So when we get more purchasing power, that means many other countries are able to purchase our goods. This is the case, for example, when we talk about Apple and we say Apple and Samsung, both of them, they want to put their products abroad, but they are only able to put them because economies are growing. We're talking about that developing economies for them to buy a phone, third generation, like latest generation phone is expensive. So they are finding the ways, but in the end, the economies are getting better. And now this is increasing and the purchasing power is getting better. And of course, like it says here, world has become significantly wealthier. The world has become wealthier. And that's the reason why we can do it. So in this case, when we talk about the role of technological change, this is very critical, not only because now we have access to internet and we can see the products that are consumed in other places and we can buy through retailers like Amazon or Coupang from other countries. But the most important fact in here when it comes to technology development is the transportation. Transportation has really evolved in the sense that we know where the products are. We are able to clear them in customs of other countries. We can track them. We can release them from customs. The logistics can be much faster. And we can talk about that. If I want a product from America, I can get it in less than a week. Why? This is all about because of technology. The fulfillment process of that product is technologically supported. The same thing, the containerization. Containers are all, when you look at a port, those big metal containers, also they are filled strategically. Previously, containers were just filled by one company. But nowadays, because of technology, we're able to fill a container with products from many different companies and make it more effective. So we can move those containers based on the needs of different companies as compared to based on one. So maybe I will put for you one video of logistics on how logistics work so that you can understand this much better, right? So this again, we talk about lower transportation of costs and of goods and so on, right? So the same thing, we have because of this, we have low cost of communication also. The internet has given that us and faster communication. That means we send an email, we set an agreement online, and everything is much faster. And to this, of course, there has been a reduction in cultural distance. What does this mean? That means that markets are becoming almost homogeneous. They are accepting more and more things from other countries. And then, of course, consumer tastes and preferences have changed, right? In Korea, now we talk about people don't just go for local products; they want products from foreign countries. And that makes a change because local companies also have to be more competitive in order to cope with the changes of what the consumers want, right? So in the following slides, let's talk about whether globalization is good or not. Here there's many debates, and in this there's positives and there's negatives. I cannot say that everything is positive, because in the end, uh, economies are looking to more integrated production in different places. But on the other hand, a benefit for someone, that means there's some problems affected for the other party. When we say we want to produce cheaper, you know, so Nike says, okay, I want to produce cheaper shoes. Fair enough, but they are abusing maybe the labor in a certain country. Why? Because if we say in America, what is the rate, the hourly rate for paying for a factory worker? We can say $13 per hour as per regulation. But if you want to set the operation in Vietnam, or you want to set it in China or in Indonesia, then perhaps that rate will be a $1 per day. So you see a much different wages. So in this case, is that equitable for that country? And then some economists say, like, yeah, it's better than have $1 than nothing. But when we think about it, it's like, why not pay them the half? Why not pay them $6 or $7? That seems equitable too. So again, there's many debates on this, whether really globalization is good or not, and in the end, there has been protests against it. Some people say it's good because it generates works, jobs for people, generates jobs, and there's mobility of people, and then the world is becoming more homogeneous, which is good. There's not much difference in people, etc. But in the end, I mean, there's people that disagree with that. In terms of jobs, also, like I said, there's good things because there's more jobs, but in the end, there's also the outsourcing of jobs. Is not that good, because in the end, the salaries are lower. So, and also, like I said, I mean, of course, we're talking here about outsourcing to other countries or other companies, and that's good for the company, but sometimes it's not good for workers in other countries, right? So, now, again, some cons of it is that many advanced economies report shortage of highly skilled workers and excess of unskilled workers. So now cheap production means unskilled workers. So, and that means maybe the workforce is shifting, because in the end, there's less skilled workers around the world, right? So we talk about also some problems, which is the lack of regulation in less developed countries, which is globalization is good, but sometimes people is abused, right? And they need to set better regulations also to protect their employees, those countries, not just let any company come and abuse them, right? So anyways, we also talk about sovereignty, whether we want to become one or not. Is that the question, right? That's a question, whether Korea wants to be Korea or Korea wants to be Asia. The same as Europeans have it with the European Union. You want to be a German, or you just want to be a European? And I think the identity is something that people don't want to lose. So this is one of the problems of globalizations as well. The same thing, problem is also with globalization and world poor people, which is the gap is increasing. Developed nations are becoming more developed, but poor nations are becoming poorer. Despite that they have more job opportunities, the salaries do not commensurate, and in the end, they are just performing low-skill labor. This becomes equitable when companies are trying to set training and then are transferring knowledge. Transferring knowledge is important. It's good. It helps economies, but just setting cheap labor in another country, that doesn't work very well. Okay, so closing down to what we learned today. Yes, international business is good. It helps us to expand to other markets, gives opportunities, but in the end, it's very complex. It's very difficult to set operations in another country because of the regulations, because we don't understand the culture, because sometimes the drawbacks are more than the benefits. So we have to weigh whether the benefits are more than the risks. You know, and here I mentioned in the slides the example of McDonald's in India. They had to change their whole operation because in the end they cannot serve beef, and they have to serve it in a halal way to serve the Muslim community. So you're talking a large population of over it's almost a billion people. So do you want to sell to such extensive large market? Yes, you want. So does that mean adapting to that culture, to that way? Yes, but also we have to think whether Indians want to buy McDonald's, and that is another thing that culturally is difficult, because in the end they have a very strong culture of eating curry and their own local food. They are very nationalistic in that sense. So whether that product will be accepted, it's a high risk. It must be measured, it must be calculated and deeply analyzed whether it's good to set operations in another country and sell and put the products in another country. Okay, very good. So again, countries are different, and then we have to think whether it's a good thing for us to really do it or not, measure the risk benefit. Okay, very good. So that's all for today. If you have any questions, you can email them to me, or you can talk them to me, and then we will talk about it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.